Daniel Cole had been floating through the cold emptiness of space for 3 days. His small escape pod was running out of air. The lights inside flickered every few minutes. He had not eaten anything in 2 days, and his water was almost gone. Outside the tiny window, he could see nothing but darkness and distant stars. 3 days ago, everything had been normal. Daniel was working on a cargo ship called the Starbound Mule. It was an old ship, not fancy, but it paid the bills. He and his crew of 5 were hauling supplies to a mining colony near the edge of known space. They were simple people doing simple work. Then the raiders came. The attack lasted only 10 minutes. The raiders hit them fast and hard. They blew a hole in the side of the ship before anyone could react. Daniel watched his friends get pulled into the vacuum of space. He heard their screams through the radio before the signal went dead. He barely made it to the escape pod. He was the only one who survived. Now he was alone, drifting, dying. Daniel was 32 years old. He had grown up on a poor colony world where life was hard and death came easy. He never went to fancy schools. He never became a soldier or a scientist. He was just a cargo hauler, a nobody who moved boxes from one planet to another. And now he was going to die in a metal box, forgotten by everyone. He closed his eyes and tried to accept it. At least it would be peaceful. At least he would just fall asleep and never wake up. Then the golden light appeared. At first, Daniel thought he was dreaming. A huge ship came out of nowhere, its hull shining like liquid gold in the starlight. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. The design was smooth and flowing, like it had been grown rather than built. Strange symbols glowed along its surface. Daniel knew what it was. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Valorians. Humans had only met the Valorians 6 months ago. They were an ancient race, older than human civilization by thousands of years. Their empire stretched across 100 star systems. They had technology that humans could barely understand. And they were beautiful in a strange and alien way. Their skin shimmered like pearl. Their eyes glowed violet. They moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy and rough. Most humans had never seen a Valorian in person. Daniel certainly had not. And now one of their ships was pulling his tiny pod into its belly. He should have felt hope. Instead, he felt confused. Why would the Valorians bother with a dying human? To them, humans were like children, a young species that had barely learned to walk among the stars. Why would they care about one lost cargo hauler? The pod landed inside a large hangar. The golden walls hummed with energy. Daniel tried to stand, but his legs were too weak. The door of his pod hissed open, and bright light flooded in. He fell forward onto the floor. His body was shutting down. He could barely see, barely think, but he could hear sounds around him. Strange sounds, shouting, fighting. The clash of metal against metal. Something was wrong. Daniel forced his eyes to focus. The hangar was not peaceful. It was chaos. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Valorian guards in silver armor were fighting against dark figures in black. Blood, purple and glowing, pooled beneath the fallen. This was not a rescue. This was a battle. Daniel did not understand what was happening. He did not know who was fighting or why, but his survival instincts kicked in. He crawled behind a pile of crates and watched. The dark figures were winning. They moved fast, faster than the guards. Their weapons were curved blades that cut through armor like paper. One by one, the guards fell. Then Daniel saw her. A young Valorian woman was backed against a wall. She was different from the others. Her robes were white and gold, decorated with symbols that looked important. Her face was terrified but proud. 3 of the dark figures had surrounded her. They were closing in slowly, like predators enjoying the hunt. Daniel's brain told him to stay hidden. He was weak. He was dying. He had no weapons, no training, no chance. If he tried to help, he would die for nothing. But something else inside him refused to listen. Maybe it was the 3 days of floating alone in the dark. Maybe it was watching his friends die and being unable to save them. Maybe it was just the simple fact that he was a human being, and human beings did stupid things when they saw someone in trouble. Daniel grabbed a blade from a fallen guard. It was heavy and strange in his hand. He had never used a weapon like this before. He had been in bar fights, sure. He had thrown punches and taken beatings on a dozen different worlds. But this was different. He did not care. He stood up on shaking legs and charged at the 3 attackers. The first one turned just in time to see Daniel swinging the blade. The attacker was fast, but he was surprised. He had not expected a half-dead human to appear out of nowhere. The blade caught him across the arm, and he stumbled back with a hiss of pain. The second attacker spun around and slashed at Daniel. The blade cut across his shoulder, and pain exploded through his body. Daniel screamed but did not stop. He swung again, wild and desperate. The blade connected with something, and the second attacker went down. The third one was smarter. He circled around Daniel, watching him with cold eyes. Daniel was bleeding badly now. His vision was going dark at the edges. He could feel his body giving up, but he planted his feet and raised the blade. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on." The attacker lunged. Daniel moved on pure instinct. He ducked under the blade and drove his own weapon forward. He felt it sink into something soft. The attacker made a choking sound and collapsed. Daniel stood there for a moment, swaying. Then his legs gave out, and he fell. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was the young Valorian woman staring down at him. Her violet eyes were wide with shock. Her lips were moving, saying something he could not hear. Then there was nothing. Daniel woke up in pain. That was the first thing he noticed. His shoulder burned like fire. His ribs felt like someone had taken a hammer to them. Every breath was a struggle. The second thing he noticed was that he was not dead. He opened his eyes slowly. The light above him was soft and golden. He was lying on something smooth and warm, not the cold metal floor of the hangar. Strange machines hummed around him, covered in symbols he could not read. A face appeared above him. It was the young Valorian woman. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on water. Her violet eyes studied him with a mix of curiosity and something else. Concern, maybe. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was soft and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The physician said you would not survive the night." They were wrong. Daniel tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The woman reached for something and brought a small container to his lips. The liquid inside was cool and sweet. He drank greedily. "Where am I?" he managed to ask. "You are in the medical bay of my ship," the woman replied. "I am Selara Vazaneth, third daughter of the High Sovereign. You saved my life, human. I owe you a debt that I can never truly repay." Daniel blinked. His foggy brain slowly processed what she had said. Third daughter of the High Sovereign. That meant she was a princess. A real princess of the Valorian Empire. And he, a nobody cargo hauler, had saved her life. "The attackers," he croaked. "Who were they?" Solara's expression darkened. "Assassins. Sent by enemies of my family. They knew our route. They had help from inside. My guards were outnumbered and outmatched." She paused and looked at him with those strange glowing eyes. "You were the only one who could help me. A dying human with a stolen blade. And you chose to fight." Daniel remembered the fight now. The pain, the blood, the desperate swings of his weapon. He remembered thinking that he was going to die. He remembered not caring. "I did not really think about it," he admitted. "I just saw you in trouble and moved." "That is what confuses me," Selara said quietly. She sat down on a chair beside his bed. Her movements were graceful, like a dancer. My physicians tell me that your body was already failing when you boarded our ship. You had not eaten in days. Your oxygen was low. Your muscles were wasting away. By all logic, you should not have been able to stand, let alone fight. Daniel shrugged, then winced at the pain. Humans are stubborn, I guess. Stubborn? Solara tested the word like it was new to her. Yes, that is one way to describe it. Another way would be insane. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he laughed anyway. Yeah, we get that a lot. Solara did not laugh. She watched him with an expression that Daniel could not read. The Valorians were hard to understand. Their faces did not move the same way human faces did. Their emotions were hidden behind layers of ancient culture and alien thought. You are badly wounded, she said finally. The blade that cut your shoulder was poisoned. It is a slow poison designed to cause suffering. My physicians have done what they can, but they do not know human biology well. They say you have a 50% chance of survival. Daniel thought about that for a moment. 50%. Better odds than he had expected, honestly. I have had worse odds, he said. Solara tilted her head. When? 3 days ago, when I was floating in that escape pod with no food, no water, and no hope. I figured I was dead for sure. Then your ship showed up. He paused and met her eyes. Maybe the universe is not done with me yet. The princess was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars drifted past slowly. The ship was moving through deep space, heading somewhere Daniel did not know. My people are very old, Solara said without turning around. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have watched younger races stumble and struggle and die. Most of them are forgotten now. Just dust in the cosmic wind. She paused. When we first met your people, we thought you would be the same. Humans are so young, so fragile. Your lives last less than a century. You have no great powers, no ancient wisdom. You are like candle flames in an endless night. Daniel listened without speaking. He did not know where she was going with this. But you, Solara continued, turning to face him. You were dying. You had every reason to hide and save what little life you had left. Instead, you threw yourself at 3 trained killers with nothing but a blade in your bare hands. You fought like a wild animal. You refused to fall, even when your body was failing. You refused to die, even when death was certain. She walked back to his bedside and looked down at him. Her violet eyes were burning with something Daniel had never seen before. It almost looked like respect. My people have forgotten how to fight like that, she said softly. We live so long that we have learned to be careful, to calculate, to avoid risks. We do not throw ourselves into danger for strangers. We do not sacrifice ourselves for people we have never met. She reached out and touched his hand gently. Her fingers were cool and smooth. You have reminded me of something important, Daniel Cole. Something my people lost a long time ago. Daniel swallowed hard. What is that? The value of a short life lived boldly, Solara replied. The courage that comes from knowing your time is limited. The fire that burns in those who have nothing to lose. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Rest now, human. You have a battle ahead of you. The poison is still in your blood, and the next few days will be hard. But I have a feeling you will survive. She smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise on an alien world. Your kind seems to have a talent for surviving things that should kill you. Daniel closed his eyes. His body was tired, so tired. But somewhere deep inside, a small flame flickered. It was the same flame that had kept him going in the escape pod. The same flame that had pushed him to fight the assassins. The same flame that had burned in humans since the beginning of their history. He was not going to die. Not today. Not like this. He had survived worse. He would survive this too. And as he drifted into sleep, he heard Solara's voice one more time, soft and wondering. "Remarkable," she whispered. "Truly remarkable." The fever came on the second night. Daniel burned. His skin was on fire. His blood felt like boiling water pumping through his veins. The Valorian physicians rushed around him, speaking in their musical language, their faces tight with worry. They had never treated a human before. They did not know what to do. The poison was eating him from the inside. It was designed to kill Valorians slowly and painfully over several weeks. In a human body, it worked much faster. The physicians expected Daniel to die before morning. But Daniel did not die. His body fought back. Deep inside his cells, millions of years of evolution kicked into action. Humans had come from Earth, a world that tried to kill everything on it. Disease, predators, poison, radiation. Earth was a death world, and humans had survived it all. Their immune systems were weapons, forged in the fires of endless biological warfare. The fever raged for 3 days. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness. He saw strange things in his dreams. He saw his mother, who had died when he was young. He saw his friends from the Starbound Mule, waving at him from across a great distance. He saw Earth, a blue and green jewel spinning in the darkness. A home he had never actually visited, but somehow still missed. Through it all, Solara stayed by his side. She did not understand why she felt so drawn to this strange human. He was not beautiful by Valorian standards. His skin was rough and scarred. His body was thick with muscle built for labor, not grace. He was loud when he breathed and clumsy when he moved. By every measure of her people, he was primitive, but there was something about him that she could not ignore. A fire that burned behind his eyes. A stubbornness that defied all logic. Even now, as his body fought a battle it should have lost, he refused to give up. He mumbled in his sleep, nonsense words mixed with curses and prayers. His hands clenched into fists. His jaw tightened. He was fighting death itself. And somehow, impossibly, he was winning. On the 4th day, the fever broke. Daniel opened his eyes and found Solara sitting beside him, reading something on a glowing tablet. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her violet eyes. Her usually perfect hair was slightly messy. She looked almost human. "You look terrible," Daniel said, his voice rough. Solara looked up sharply. For a moment, she just stared at him. Then she laughed. It was a strange sound, bright and surprised, like she had not expected to make it. "You nearly died 4 times in the past 3 days, she said. "And the first thing you do is insult me?" Daniel tried to sit up, but fell back immediately. His body was weak, weaker than it had ever been. But the burning was gone. The poison was defeated. "What can I say?" he muttered. "I have bad manners." Solara shook her head, but she was still smiling. "The physicians are in shock. They have studied your blood samples for hours. They cannot understand how you survived. The poison should have destroyed your organs. Instead, your body produced antibodies that neutralized it completely. They have never seen anything like it." Daniel thought about that. He did not really understand the science. He just knew that he was alive, and that was enough. "Humans are hard to kill," he said simply. "We come from a rough neighborhood." "So I'm learning," Solara replied. She set down her tablet and leaned forward. "Daniel, I must tell you something. We are approaching my homeworld. In 2 days, we will arrive at the capital. My mother, the High Sovereign, has been informed of everything that happened. The attack, the assassins, and your role in saving my life." Daniel felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Is that good or bad?" "I do not know," Solara admitted. My mother is not like me. She has ruled our empire for 3,000 years. She has seen countless species come and go. She does not think highly of younger races. To her, humans are children, barely worthy of notice. She paused. But you have done something remarkable. You have saved her daughter. She cannot ignore that. What does that mean for me? Solara hesitated. You will be presented before the royal court. It is tradition. Anyone who performs a great service for the royal family must be acknowledged publicly. It is both an honor and a test. A test? The court will judge you, Solara explained. They will watch how you speak, how you move, how you carry yourself. They will look for weakness. Many of them believe that humans are inferior. They will want you to prove them right. Her violet eyes met his. You must not give them that satisfaction. Daniel let out a long breath. He had never been good at politics. He was a cargo hauler, not a diplomat. He did not know how to bow properly or use fancy words. He did not know the customs of the Valorian court. I am just going to be myself, he said finally. That is all I know how to do. Solara nodded slowly. That may be enough. Or it may not. But I will be with you, Daniel. I will not let them treat you with disrespect. You saved my life. That means something, even to them. Over the next 2 days, Daniel recovered slowly. He forced himself to eat, even though the Valorian food tasted strange on his tongue. He made himself walk, even though every step was painful. He exercised his weakened muscles, pushing through the agony because he refused to appear before an alien, Court looking like a broken man. Solara watched him with growing amazement. She had seen Valorian warriors give up after lesser injuries. She had seen ancient nobles choose death over the indignity of weakness. But this human, this fragile, short-lived creature, kept going. He fell down and got back up. He failed and tried again. He refused to accept defeat. Why do you push yourself so hard? She asked him one evening, as he struggled through another round of painful stretches. Daniel paused and looked at her. Sweat dripped down his face. His muscles trembled with exhaustion. Because I only get one life, he said quietly. You Valorians live for thousands of years. You have time to rest, to recover, to wait. I do not. Every day matters. Every hour counts. I cannot afford to waste time lying in bed when there is work to be done. Solara was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched his shoulder gently. My grandmother is 4,000 years old, she said. She has forgotten more knowledge than you will ever learn. She has seen empires rise and fall. She has watched stars die. She paused. But I do not think she has ever understood what you just told me. The weight of limited time. The urgency of a short life. It is a burden that my people have never carried. Daniel straightened up and met her eyes. It is not a burden, he said. It is a gift. It is what makes every moment precious. It is what makes us fight so hard to live. Solara smiled, and this time there was something warm in her expression. Something that looked almost like admiration. Perhaps, she said softly, my people could learn something from yours after all. The Valorian homeworld was called Valoria Prime, and it was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. The planet glowed like a jewel against the darkness of space. Its surface was covered with vast oceans of deep purple and continents of silver and gold. Cities rose from the land like sculptures, their towers reaching toward the sky in impossible spirals. Everything was elegant, ancient, and perfect. Daniel watched through the window as their ship descended through the clouds. His heart was beating fast. His palms were sweating. In a few hours, he would stand before the rulers of an empire that had existed for 10,000 years. He, Daniel Cole, a cargo hauler from a backwater colony, would face beings who had been alive when his ancestors were still living in caves. It was terrifying. And yet, somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt something else too. A spark of defiance. A refusal to be intimidated. He was human. And humans did not bow to fear. Selara came to find him as the ship landed. She was dressed in formal robes now, white and gold, covered with symbols of her family line. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that made her look older and more regal. She looked every inch a princess. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," Daniel admitted honestly. "But I will go anyway." Selara smiled at that. "You sound like one of our ancient warriors. They used to say that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward despite it." "We say something similar on Earth," Daniel replied. "Or so I have heard. I have never actually been there." They walked together through the ship and down the boarding ramp. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Hundreds of Valorians stood waiting, their faces curious and suspicious. They had heard about the human who had saved the princess. Now, they wanted to see him for themselves. Daniel felt their eyes on him like physical weight. He was shorter than almost everyone there. His skin was dull compared to their shimmering beauty. His clothes were borrowed and did not fit quite right. He looked exactly like what he was, a rough, scarred man from a primitive species who had stumbled into a world he did not belong in, but he walked with his head held high. He met their stares without flinching. He had faced death too many times to be scared of disapproval. The crowd parted as Selara led him toward a massive building at the center of the city. It was a palace, though that word did not do it justice. The structure was made of crystal and light, soaring into the sky like a frozen waterfall. Symbols glowed along its surface, ancient words in a language Daniel could not read. Inside, the throne room waited. Daniel had expected something grand. He had not expected this. The room was larger than any building he had ever been in. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into soft golden light. Thousands of Valorians filled the space, arranged in careful rows according to their rank and status. They wore robes of every color, decorated with jewels and symbols of power. The air hummed with quiet conversation and barely hidden judgment. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal, sat the High Sovereign. She was ancient. Daniel could feel it just by looking at her. Her face was smooth and ageless, but her eyes held the weight of countless centuries. She was beautiful in the way that a glacier is beautiful, cold and vast and utterly beyond human understanding. Her presence filled the room like gravity, pulling everything toward her. Beside her throne stood two other figures, a man and a woman who looked almost as ancient as she did. Advisors, Daniel guessed. Or maybe other members of the royal family. He did not know, and there was no time to ask. Selara walked forward, and Daniel followed. The crowd went silent. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. He could feel their contempt, their curiosity, their disbelief. A human, in the throne room of the Valorian Empire. It was unheard of. They stopped at the base of the throne. Selara knelt gracefully, her robes spreading around her like flower petals. Daniel remained standing. He did not know if he was supposed to kneel or not. Nobody had told him the protocol. So he did what felt natural. He stood straight, met the High Sovereign's gaze, and waited. The silence stretched on. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Finally, the High Sovereign spoke. Her voice was like music, deep and resonant, filling the entire room without effort. "So," she said, "this is the human who saved my daughter." It was not a question, but Daniel answered anyway. "Yes, Your Majesty. I am Daniel Cole." A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. Some sounded shocked. Others sounded offended. A human speaking directly to the High Sovereign without being asked. It was apparently a serious breach of etiquette. The High Sovereign raised one elegant hand, and the whispers died instantly. "Tell me, Daniel Cole," she continued, her ancient eyes boring into his. "Why did you do it? You were dying. You had no reason to involve yourself in our affairs. Yet you threw yourself at armed assassins with nothing but a stolen blade. Why?" Daniel thought about the question. He could give a diplomatic answer, something safe and flattering. But that was not who he was. So he told the truth. "Because she needed help," he said simply. "And I was there." More whispers. More shocked looks. The High Sovereign's expression did not change. "That is all?" she asked. "No grand purpose? No hope of reward? You risked your life for a stranger simply because she needed help?" "Yes," Daniel said. "That is what humans do. We help each other. We protect each other. Even when it costs us everything. Even when there is no reward. Because that is who we are." The throne room was completely silent now. Daniel could feel the weight of 1,000 ancient beings watching him, judging him, trying to understand him. Solara rose from her kneeling position and stepped forward. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "This man saved my life," she declared. "He fought 3 trained assassins with a body that was already dying. He bled for me. He nearly died for me. And when our physicians declared him beyond saving, he had the audacity to live anyway." She turned to face the crowd, and her violet eyes blazed with emotion. "You call humans primitive, fragile, insignificant. But this insignificant creature did what none of you could. He stood in the path of doom and refused to move." The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel stood there, surrounded by ancient beings who had dismissed his entire species as worthless and waited for their judgment. His heart was pounding. His legs ached from standing. But he did not look away. He did not bow his head. Whatever happened next, he would face it like a human, standing tall. The High Sovereign sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Her ancient eyes studied Daniel with an intensity that made him feel like she was looking directly into his soul. He wondered what she saw there. Probably nothing impressive. Just a tired man who had been through too much and somehow survived. Finally, she rose from her throne. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. The High Sovereign never stood during formal audiences. It was unheard of. Yet here she was, descending the crystal steps slowly, her robes trailing behind her like liquid silver. Her advisors exchanged worried glances, but did not move to stop her. She walked toward Daniel until she stood directly in front of him. Up close, she was even more imposing. She was taller than him by nearly a foot. Her presence was crushing, like standing at the edge of a vast ocean and feeling the weight of all that water pressing against you. "Kneel," she commanded. Her voice was quiet but carried the force of absolute authority. Daniel's body wanted to obey. Every instinct screamed at him to drop to his knees, to show respect, to submit to this ancient being who could destroy him with a word. He was a nobody. She was the ruler of an empire that spanned 100 stars. The power difference between them was so vast that it should not even be questioned. But something inside, Daniel refused. He thought about his ancestors. The humans who had fought and bled and died so that their children could have freedom. The slaves who had broken their chains. The workers who had stood up to tyrants. The ordinary people who had looked at overwhelming power and said, no. Humans had spent thousands of years kneeling to kings and emperors and gods. And they had learned, through blood and suffering, that kneeling only led to more kneeling. They had earned the right to stand on their feet. Daniel would not throw that away, not even before the ruler of the greatest empire in the galaxy. "With respect, Your Majesty," he said quietly, "humans do not kneel. Not anymore. We tried that for a few thousand years. It did not work out very well for us. The crowd exploded. Shocked gasps filled the throne room. Some Valorians shouted in outrage. Guards moved forward, hands on their weapons. Salar's face went pale with fear. Daniel had just committed what was probably the greatest insult possible in Valorian culture, but he did not move. He did not apologize. He stood there and waited for whatever came next. The High Sovereign raised one hand, and instantly, the chaos stopped. The guards froze. The shouting died. Every eye in the room was fixed on her, waiting to see what she would do. She looked at Daniel for a long, terrible moment. Her expression was unreadable. Daniel braced himself for whatever punishment was coming. Execution, probably. Maybe something worse. The Valorians had been around for 10,000 years. They probably had very creative ways of dealing with insults. And then, slowly, impossibly, the High Sovereign smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was not a kind smile. But it was genuine. A crack in the ancient mask of power and control. Fascinating, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Truly fascinating. She turned to face the assembled court. When she spoke again, her voice filled the entire room. I have lived for 3,000 years, she declared. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species crawl out of the mud and build civilizations, only to destroy themselves through greed and fear. I have seen every kind of being this galaxy has to offer. And in all that time, I have never met anyone quite like this human. She gestured toward Daniel. Look at him, small, weak, mortal. His entire lifespan would be nothing more than a brief moment in our history. By every measure we use to judge worth, he should be insignificant. The crowd listened in stunned silence. And yet, the High Sovereign continued. This insignificant creature did what none of my guards could do. He saved my daughter. He fought trained assassins with nothing but a stolen blade and a body that was already dying. He refused to surrender to death. And now, standing before the entire might of my court, he refuses to kneel. She turned back to Daniel. Her ancient eyes were shining with something that looked almost like respect. Do you know why I asked you to kneel, Daniel Cole? She asked. No, Your Majesty. Because I wanted to see if you would. She paused. Every other species we have encountered has knelt. They see our power, our age, our technology, and they bow. They submit. They accept their place beneath us. It is what we expect. It is what we have grown accustomed to. She reached into her robes and withdrew something. It was a medallion, made of metals that seemed to shift and glow with inner light. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, ancient words in a language that predated human civilization. But you did not kneel, the High Sovereign said. You looked at all our power and all our glory, and you stood your ground. You showed me something I had forgotten. Something my people forgot a long time ago. She stepped closer to Daniel and placed the medallion around his neck. It was heavy and warm against his chest. The courage of those who have nothing to lose, she said softly. The fire that burns in those who know their time is short. The strength that comes not from power, but from the simple refusal to give up. She stepped back and raised her voice so that everyone in the throne room could hear. Daniel Cole of Earth, she announced. I name you Shield Bearer of the Royal House, friend of the Valorian Empire, protector of the Third Princess. Let it be known across all our worlds that this human has earned our respect. Not through power, not through wealth, but through courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of his kind. The throne room was silent. Then, slowly, one Valorian began to clap. Then another. Then more. The sound grew and grew until it filled the entire space. A thundering wave of applause that shook the crystal walls. Daniel stood there, the medallion warm against his chest, and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Pride. not the small pride of a job well done, but the deep, powerful pride of knowing that he had represented his entire species and had not been found wanting. Salara appeared at his side, her violet eyes bright with tears and joy. She took his hand and squeezed it tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You showed them who humans really are." Daniel looked out at the crowd of ancient beings, these immortal creatures who had watched stars die and civilizations crumble. They were looking at him with new eyes now, not with contempt, not with pity, but with respect, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of fear, because they had finally understood what humans were. Not a young species stumbling through the galaxy, not fragile creatures to be pitied and ignored, but something else entirely. Survivors, fighters, beings who refused to stay down no matter how many times they were knocked over. And as Daniel stood there in the throne room of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, he thought about all the humans who had come before him, all the ordinary people who had faced impossible odds and refused to give up, all the brief, burning lives that had pushed humanity forward, one stubborn step at a time. This was their legacy. This was their gift to him. And now, standing among the stars, Daniel had passed that gift on. Humanity was no longer alone. They had been noticed. They had been tested. And they had been found worthy. This was just the beginning.